Hi guys, in this video I want to help clarify the responses to conflict that are presented in our textbook in chapter 9. They start on page 260 and essentially we learn that there are 4 responses to conflict and they can either be active or passive and they can be destructive or constructive. And a few of them actually encompass more than one of those 4 qualities. The 4 responses to conflict are exit, neglect, loyalty, and voice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a scenario and show you how the 2 people in that scenario can act in one of the 4 given ways presented in our chapter. For example, let's say there are 2 people quarreling or having conflict over spending. In the exit response, one of the partners literally withdraws physically or psychologically from the conflict altogether. This means they literally walk away from the conversation. They avoid the fight completely. They're one of the people that isn't going to answer text messages coming their way. They have completely exited the conflict itself. It's definitely a destructive method because it doesn't acknowledge the conflict at all. The second scenario is the same 2 people arguing over finances might do the neglect response to conflict. This is when someone reduces the magnitude of the fight and kind of laughs it off as like, oh, you're making a mountain out of a molehill, or it's not that big of a deal. Once again, this is a passive and destructive response to conflict because it's almost not acknowledging once again that there is a conflict there. The third way to respond to this argument or conflict over finances would be seen are labeled as loyalty. And loyalty is when you are blindly loyal to a person in a conflict despite the differences you may have with them. It's almost like I'm team this person and it doesn't really matter what they say, I'm always going to be team this person. So it's a silent allegiance to someone. And once again, it's a passive thing because it doesn't really address the conflict. We see a lot of this culturally. Sometimes, for example, this might happen where even if your spouse is right or wrong, you might see that some women tend to not want to, in different parts of the world, stand up to their husband. They kind of blindly have allegiance to him because that's how they were culturally raised. And we see that in a lot of different scenarios. It doesn't necessarily have to be that one culturally. The fourth response to conflict is the voice response, which of course is the most beneficial. It's when someone addresses the conflict head on, uses their voice and says, this seems to be a problem for us. Now how can we resolve it? Let's talk about it and let's fix it. So hopefully by giving you the scenario of 2 people having conflict over finances, you see that there are 4 different responses that those people can have in those scenarios. And hopefully you also see that the voice response seems to be the most effective and mature.